Good evening, and thank you for being here tonight and supporting John Jay College, the finest institution of its kind in this country. Thank you all for being here. It is an honor and a privilege. It is a privilege to introduce our honoree for this next award. It has been said that adversity can make or break you in this life. It can turn you bitter and resentful, or it can make you stronger and more determined to help others who find themselves in similar situations. It is our great good fortune that Jeffrey Mark Deskovic has turned his adversity into something positive. After spending more than 16 years in prison for a crime he did not commit, he became the founder of the Jeffrey Deskovic Foundation for Justice, an institution that seeks to exonerate those who are wrongfully convicted as he was. His foundation has already exonerated 2 people and helped free 5 more through other legal means. He's a certified New Jersey Police Academy instructor who lectures officers on ethics and best practices. He has written over 200 articles, testified at legislative hearings, and is listed in our own John Jay's 50 at 50 book, listing the top 50 students in this school's 50-year history. He is currently pursuing his law degree at Pace University and is one of those individuals who has turned his adversity into the strength to do good and help others. Please join me in welcoming John Jay College's 2018 Alumnus of the Year, Jeffrey Mark Deskovic.
At John Jay College, we have the slogan, fierce advocates for justice. For me, that's very deeply personal. It's not abstract. Justice is clearly defined. Getting the master's degree here at the John Jay College of Criminal Justice opened so many doors for me as an advocate. I already had done a boatload of advocacy work before that and gotten a bachelor's degree. But getting a master's degree from a top 10 school in criminal justice, I feel put my advocacy work on the next level. I had fought very, very long and hard prior to graduating in 2013. I was exonerated and freed back in 2006. And my fight between 2006 and 2013 was that I wanted to be recognized as an advocate whose backstory is that I was wrongfully imprisoned, but that I wasn't simply an exoneree. I'm not just what happened to me, but that drives me. But I'm an advocate on the same par and level as somebody else who hadn't been wrongfully convicted. And so obtaining that master's degree really was an additional step in getting many of my peers from amongst the innocence movement and from the role of other advocates and academics and people who would study and can do policy. You know, I could speak their same language. I had the degree. I could back up my arguments with the analysis and, using facts and figures and scholarly papers. I couldn't do that prior to having the master's degree. So for me, the master's really, it really springboarded me even further. And so for that, I'm very, very happy to be associated with John Jay and to have received the education that I did here, from the material I learned in the courses to the connections that I made from the faculty and the alum. I would encourage everybody who's interested in doing policy work as an advocate to definitely consider John Jay. Put them as your #1 option, because I feel like the education I received here in this school was second to none. So my life mission is to free people who are wrongfully imprisoned and to prevent wrongful convictions. That's how I make sense of, that's how I understand why I went through the 16 years of wrongful imprisonment that I did. And so my life journey along the way was filled with very many memorable people who intervened in one way or another, however small, however slight. Far too many that I could ever recognize. I do want to speak about the best of the best in terms of the impact, and that's no slight to anyone. So without a doubt, the first such recognition belongs to Maggie Taylor, who was the intake worker at the Innocence Project, who, when my case reached her desk and she reviewed it and presented it to the lawyers, and the lawyers did not want to go ahead with my case because the Innocence Project, the entity that exonerated me, their model was, let's take cases in which DNA testing can exonerate somebody, but in which no prior testing had been conducted. But in my case, prior testing had been conducted. It didn't match me, but I nonetheless had been wrongfully convicted, and therefore, they had never come across such a case like that, and they didn't want to take the case. Ms. Taylor represented my case after getting a no. She presented my case 3 times before finally getting it across using an idea that I had suggested in terms of the DNA data bank. So I just would like to acknowledge Maggie Taylor. She's here with us tonight. And I just, please stand. I know you're modest, but I'm not here tonight if it's not for you. The next most significant person in my life in leading up to tonight. So while I was in prison, I tried to minimize the loss that I was experiencing. I obtained a GED because I was arrested when I was 16 and hence couldn't finish. So I got the GED while I was imprisoned. And then I got an associate's degree from Corning Community College. And I completed an additional year of study towards the bachelor's when the funding was cut for prisoners, because the rhetoric went, why should prisoners get a free education? When in reality, nobody who would not be eligible to go to school on Pell and TAP grants, nobody who couldn't go if free was suddenly allowed to go just by virtue of being incarcerated. I filled out the financial aid forms. They were the same exact forms. So we need to bring college education back to prison as a serious crime-fighting tool. And until we can get this state to do just that, I want to recognize Sean Pica from Hudson Link, the nonprofit entity that brings college education to some prisons. Sean, if you could stand up, please. He's over there on the back right. Go ahead, Sean. Hudson Link. You know, I was applying to that program when I got transferred to Sing Sing, and fortunately, Sean, I never took a class, fortunately, because I was exonerated and freed. Okay? But speaking of college, I mentioned to you what my history there was. And so it was fortunate that I made that decision to go to college, because when I was released, that became, the fact that I was 30 credits short of a bachelor's degree became a noteworthy human interest piece within some of the news coverage. And so the next person who made an intervention, very foolishly, at 32 years old, I thought that I'm too old to go to college. That was my dream long time ago. That ship sailed. I'm 32. I was just in for 16. What am I going to do? I have no idea, but certainly college couldn't possibly be in the cards. That's just another lamentable loss, or so I thought. So I naively and incorrectly thought. But Dean Alkin, Shelley Alkin from Mercy College, lined up a scholarship at Mercy College completely unbeknownst to me. And so that when she made me the offer to come to Mercy, where Mercy would show me mercy and let me finish the 30 credits short without having to pay a dime for anything. Dean Alkin, Shelley, I want to recognize you. Please stand, please. From there at Mercy College, the key, from Mercy College to John Jay, the key person definitely was Anila Duro, who was an assistant to the president. Anila had a family issue. She couldn't come tonight, but, you know, standing, representing her is Professor Sorochinsky, who's with us, who frequently coordinates wrongful conviction events. So I used to call Anila for lots of things. I was always worried that the bureaucracy, that just not being oriented, something was going to fall in the gap. And so Anila was always there for me, going above and beyond, you know, and, you know, Marina is no less in terms of the work she does. So, you know, I just want to recognize Anila tonight, standing in, you know, Dr. Sorochinsky. But it wasn't over for me then. You know, I wanted to go to law school. I wanted to go after I got the bachelor's degree, but the logic games did me in, and I wasn't able to score high enough, you know. And, you know, law schools now, they're more flexible, looking at the totality of the person, and I think that that's a great thing. That's a great move, because people like me, you know, who don't score quite so high, but can still do the work, can get the opportunity. And so the next most significant person in my life would be the professor who went to bat for me, who struggled mightily in trying to, and ultimately succeeding and getting me into Pace Law School, the Elizabeth Hobbs School of Law at Pace University. That would be none other than the country's leading expert on prosecutorial misconduct, a former prosecutor who finds prosecutorial misconduct an affront to him, an affront to his profession, whose book is the leading text in the field, named, what else? Prosecutorial Misconduct. Professor Ben Goshman. Please, you can stand for a second, Ben. And on a personal side, I would be remiss if I didn't also recognize a person who's come to be kind of like a second mom and a best friend, all rolled into one. I met her on accident after I was home for 2 years. So Miss Nancy Lopez has been a great key to me. Go ahead, Nancy, stand. Frequently coming with me to events, and as I deal with the after effects at times, which reach the after effects of my experience, you know, and the difficulties, the moments of doubt, you know, can I actually do the law work, you know, which the answer's always been yes, but it's not easy. It's very, very difficult, and so, you know, Nancy is right there. I have a two-family house, and Nancy lives upstairs, and I live downstairs, but she's always on my floor, so, you know, if I can crack a legal joke here, okay, we're separate but equal, okay? You know, but Nancy's been outstanding, and I just wanted to recognize her. And lastly, there's the person, you know, the person of the future. You know, the person of the future, you know. I met David Perisman about a year ago, and, you know, he had an interest in helping to free, you know, wrongfully convicted people and helping them to get compensation afterwards, after the Perisman firm successfully litigated a case in which a client who had spent 4 years pre-trial detention only got $4 million in compensation. And so I met David, and the bottom line is that, you know, David has agreed to donate a significant amount of money in the furtherance of freeing wrongfully convicted people, and we're going to be working in the future, not just on that endeavor, but also on the compensation side. So I want to just recognize David and ask you to please stand, just to be recognized. You know, it's been a pleasure working with you and your son, Zach. You know, and his wife is excellent in marketing. So these are the people of the future, you know, for me. So the Jeffrey Deskovic Foundation for Justice which is an organization I started. I committed $1.5 million because I wanted to take my advocacy to the next level. I wanted to do things I could never do as an individual. I wanted to reach back and free people who were in the same position that I was. It was mentioned earlier in the introduction that we've exonerated 2 people and we freed another 5 people. So a few of those people are with us tonight. The first person we ever got out of prison through any legal means. You know, when you go to the parole board, if you don't admit guilt and express remorse and take responsibility, okay, and instead you say that you're innocent, that they're almost always denied parole. So hence the innocent prisoner's dilemma, that Hobson's choice, okay? And so notwithstanding the usual methodology of people being denied release when they assert their innocence, our letter was able to convince the parole board to release John Whitfield after 25 years. And he's here tonight. And John's fight and our fight is still to win exoneration, but thank God he's been home in the meantime while the slow wheels of justice turn. We have Lorenzo Johnson with us, who's home after being in for 22 years. That was a totally collaborative effort, mainly on the PR side. He's home. Imagine that. No, but why bother with wrongful convictions? I mean, Jeff, you're just a rare case. This doesn't happen all that often. No, my friends, I wish that that was the case. Let me share with you a couple of quick numbers, right, as an example of utilizing my master's degree and policy skills as from John Jay. So, per the National Registry of Exonerations, 2,202 people have been exonerated across the country in both DNA and non-DNA cases. This last year, 139 people were exonerated, and the year before that, 166 people were exonerated. But those are the people who made it out. What about the people who didn't make it out, who are still in? With most of the innocence entities only doing DNA cases, which is available in 5 to 12% only. And let's understand something, that while we get that when you send the wrong person to prison, you also send their family, on a larger level, this is a public safety issue, because each time the wrong person is convicted, the actual criminal is free to strike again. So this is a public safety issue. And so in that aspect, to the extent that this is public safety and this is about justice and this is about accuracy, the fight against wrongful conviction is not and should not ever be understood by anybody at any time to ever be anti-law enforcement. This is about getting the right person. There was a study a few years ago by the New York Times which stated that in 25% of the exonerations that year, there was some level of police or prosecutorial cooperation. So we're all on, as a concept, we're all on the same side. So everybody should understand that. So this can happen to you. What happened to me, it can happen to you. So as an illustration of that, okay, I want to acknowledge a few other special people in the room. Could you imagine if your son was wrongfully imprisoned? Could you imagine if you had to change your hair color and you were going to lose weight and you were going to take on another name and you were going to rent an apartment to go undercover to record in conversations information you needed to try to clear your boy? Imagine from there getting a recording from a juror who said, I only voted guilty because I thought that the defendant, John Juka, was Jewish, and having that recorded. But this special lady that I want to acknowledge tonight, who's been dubbed by the press as Mother Justice, did just that. And her son, John Juka, just got the conviction reversed after 14 years on prosecutorial misconduct grounds. So I want to just recognize Doreen Giuliano for your extraordinary efforts. Please stand for a second. Okay, John's an alum from John Jay. Guys, earlier tonight, right here, just a few feet away, I spoke with him from the jail. He's still waiting retrial. But he was happy to speak with me, and he spoke with Professor Gershman as well, who's been a really ardent supporter of John's, writing a lot of articles. But in keeping with the "It Can Happen to You" theme, Anthony DePippo, who was exonerated after 20 years, and 20 years, 2 wrongful convictions, and an acquittal later, he's now exonerated and free. Anthony DePippo. Making the trip from Philadelphia. Imagine, now Philadelphia is a state where there is no compensation, just so we all understand that. And this man has never been compensated to this day, although he did 11 years on a rape case that he was exonerated of. The first man to win the right of using DNA testing, and he was exonerated, Vincent Moto. Please stand for a second, Vince. One of the major causes of wrongful convictions, prosecutorial misconduct, and myself, there's a coalition. There's a coalition called "It Can Happen to You," and we're a statewide coalition, and we've very nearly gotten a bill passed that will create the nation's first commission on prosecutor conduct. Now, every profession, if you're a barber, okay, no matter what it is, there's oversight, but there is no oversight for the prosecutors. And to hear them tell it, you don't need one, right? It's all just fine. But you need to have oversight, so this bill would do just that. And so the man I'm going to recognize was a former Monroe County legislator who had also been an Arundecoy town council person and a staffer for Assemblyman Gary Proud. So the man who was falsely charged with rape and ultimately acquitted in 2 hours, but not before his reputation was sullied, and $150,000, and the mental strain of not knowing whether or not he was going to be in his son's life or whether he was going to be in a cage for the next 25 years. The man who took that experience doing similar work, Bill Bastick, is with us here tonight from Rochester. I want to mention our clients that were working really hard. Imagine if one man is in and another man is out on the same set of facts, co-defendants, alleged to have been committed the crime together. But I mentioned Anthony DePippo, but his co-defendant, Andrew Krivak, who's a foundation client, is still in prison right now on the same set of facts, with a ton of evidence pointing to a serial rapist, as well as all the witnesses recanting. So I just want to shout Andrew Krivak, who's always on your mind, Anthony, I know. And of course, we have our client, Hector Lopez, who's another Scarcella case. And we anxiously await John's return. So moving past that, I want to just take a brief second or two, in referencing what the current state of the foundation is. So we have 11 active cases. We have 20 volunteers. 2 of them are with us tonight. Dale Jacobs, formerly of Centurion Ministries, who's now helping to screen the cases. Dale, where are you at, Dale? Please. And Stephanie Sotal, who's our office manager. I know I butchered your name, but come on, you do our office managerial work. She travels from Jersey City to the Bronx to put hours on end, volunteer. That's her commitment. And with working with Professor Gershman, we're on the verge, I want to say 50-60% chance that we could start in the fall of bringing a post-conviction clinic to the Pace Law School, which would collaborate with the foundation. We would be the feeder. David Perisman, who I mentioned earlier, he's interested in helping to fund that project. So that's on the horizons for us. So with that being said, let me say this. I've done a lot, but I've had a lot of help. But I need still more. So we need people who could think about being board members, who could introduce us to people that this type of work would speak to. We need people who can be donors, who can be small donors, who can be large donors. We need corporations who do in-kind giving. We need, as Sean Pica says, we need a fundraise. We need to fundraise. The foundation needs to fundraise. My dream is to, again, have a full complement of staff, okay, not just in New York, but one day having a satellite in each state, and eventually having one in each country. Because, you know, wrongful conviction is not an American problem. It's a worldwide problem. We just don't hear about it, and the systems are so backwards in some places that there is no appeals, there are no exonerations happening. That's not to say that there's no wrongful convictions happening. And lastly, to the young people, you know, we have a crowdfunding site called Patreon. We need to make it go viral. Dream with me, everybody, just for 1/2 second. Imagine for a minute if there was 25,000 people, and those 25,000 people could afford to part with a lowly $3 a month on a recurring basis through that site. With that money, we could get 2 lawyers, we could have 3 paralegals, we could have 3 investigators, we could have an executive director and an administrative assistant, someone to do fundraising. We could be robust. If we could do what we're doing now with volunteers and a minimal budget, imagine what we could do then. But who would want to not buy that extra cup of coffee or 2, right? That's more important than to spend any money to free innocent people. It's not. I'm crazy enough to believe that that dream could one day be recognized. But we need people to help the campaign go viral, whether that's through social media, whether that's through word of mouth, through whichever means possible. We need that. And to the future lawyers in your lifetime, based on this event right now, that this might be meaningful beyond that night that you just spoke to people about that guy with that amazing story, but that it instead turned into something that made a lasting imprint. Once in your lifetime, once, just once, take one case on pro bono on a wrongful conviction case. And with that, thank you so much for listening to me.